Let's talk about the parallel limiter in HiFAL. The parallel limiter is based on an old Motown vocal mixing technique, but we adapted it and made it work on the mix bus and in mastering. The Motown vocal mixing technique was pretty simple. They would take the vocal track, duplicate it, isolate the highs, compress it excessively, and then blend that fader in underneath the main vocal. That's essentially the design of the parallel limiter in HiFAL. That's why on the parallel limiter side, we're muting the pass bands. So what's below the low frequency crossover flag and above the high frequency crossover flag is muted. And all we have is what lives in between those flags. Then we hyper compress them and blend them in from the bottom up. The result is really controlled and balanced high frequencies. What we're doing is top-down limiting from the main HiFAL and then aggressive bottom-up limiting from the parallel limiter. So we're controlling the peaks with the main HiFAL, and then we're aggressively compressing the high frequencies in the parallel limiter and bringing them up underneath to fill in the gaps. It's two processes at once, top-down compression and bottom-up compression, all in one processor. Now, back in the day, they did this with traditional compressors, but with HiFAL, we're dealing with high-frequency acceleration limiting with adaptive attack and release. So we're better preserving the transients and treating the high frequencies in a very natural way by doing top-down high-frequency acceleration limiting and bottom-up high-frequency acceleration limiting. The combination of those two gives us clean, balanced high frequencies with minimal harmonics. Let's first talk about the crossover flags and the parallel limiter. We want to decide what frequencies to isolate, compress, and then blend in. So we can right-click in between and drag these around and figure out what frequencies need to be added. Let's add between 2 and 4K like we are now, and then we're going to hyper compress them and blend them in from the bottom up. Now, if we solo this flag, what we're gonna hear is what exists between these two crossover flags. And that is at full volume, right? There's no gain adjustment there. But when we blend that in, we're gonna be blending in with this fader. So this is a parallel fader, just like a fader on your DAW, and we're gonna blend in the frequencies between these two flags with this fader. So if we solo down here with the fader at negative infinity, we're gonna get silence. And that's correct, because this solo button is showing us the contribution of the parallel limiter to the whole mix. When this is off, we're just listening to the main HiFAL, the whole mix as it goes out of the plugin. When this solo button is on, what we're listening to is this parallel frequency band blended in at this level. So I can bring it up and down. I can now say the parallel limiter is contributing this much to the whole mix. So you have two ways to monitor what the parallel limiter is doing. Alternatively, you can right-click to solo the parallel limiter to momentarily jump in and hear what it's doing. So I can right-click, drag this up and say, I want it to be that loud in comparison to the whole mix. It's a really quick way to jump in and kind of get an understanding of how much that high frequency isolated band is contributing to the whole mix. So first we have the band isolation, then we have its contribution to the whole mix, and then we have this parallel limiter knob. What the parallel limiter knob is doing is two functions in one knob. It's doing threshold and makeup gain. Let's talk about it. This is a little bit complex, so follow me for a moment. When the parallel limiter dynamics knob is set to 0 dB, the threshold of that parallel limiter is equal to the threshold that you set on the main HiFAL. Now, when you turn up this parallel limiter dynamics knob, what you're doing is increasing the limiting, increasing the gain reduction, or conversely, lowering the threshold. So when I push this up to 3 dB, theoretically, I'm doing about 3 dB more compression than the main HiFAL. That's why it defaults to 0 dB, so that when you're starting, you're dealing with about equal compression on both sides of the processor. Now, in addition to setting the threshold of the parallel limiter, the dynamics knob is also doing smart makeup gain. As I increase compression more and more, what you'll hear is that the signal stays about the same level, but theoretically, At 24, we're doing 24 dB more gain reduction, which is a lot more gain reduction. But because the makeup gain is intelligent, we're not hearing a change in volume. Let's take a listen by right-clicking the dynamics knob as we adjust it. Now at 0 dB, the parallel limiter is doing equal gain reduction as the main HiFAL processor. As I increase this up to maybe 12 dB, we're now doing 12 dB more compression or more limiting than the main processor. So we're probably at about 12 dB of gain reduction right now because this is doing about 0.5. But the makeup gain is adding maybe 8 or 9 dB back into the signal so that we're not hearing a gain dip as we go from 12 dB more compression to 0 dB more compression than the main HiFAL processor. If we go all the way to 24 dB more compression, you can hear the sustain of the high frequencies is increasing, and the sustain and the peaks are kind of even and level, and the volume is not really changing. This is the smart makeup gain within the dynamics knob of the parallel limiter. So with the parallel limiter, we're essentially doing three things. We're first determining which frequencies we want to isolate with the crossover flags. Then we need to decide how much limiting we want to do or how much hyper limiting we want to do with the dynamics knob. This is hyper limiting. This is more natural dynamics. Then we're deciding how much we want it to contribute to the whole mix. Until next time.